I arrived early, earlier than I had to. The meeting room was empty, quiet, untouched, a still stage before the performance began. I've always preferred it this way, not just for the calm, but for the advantage. When you arrive before others, you don't just prepare your notes, you prepare your presence. You choose your posture, your silence speaks before your words ever do. That's the part most people miss. They believe success begins when the room is full, but the wise know it begins long before. The windows stretched across the far wall, revealing a city just beginning to stir. Florence, bathed in golden morning light, the rooftops shimmered with history, and I couldn't help but wonder, had Niccolò Machiavelli stood at a similar window once, watching a similar sunrise? 500 years ago, in a city pulsing with intrigue and ambition, Machiavelli studied the anatomy of power like a surgeon, not to praise it, not to condemn it, but to understand it, and that's what makes his lessons so eternal. They are not moral sermons, they are reflections of how people actually behave behind the polished curtains of civility. As I gazed out, I recalled one of his sharpest truths. Men judge more by their eyes than by their intelligence, because everyone sees what you appear to be, but few understand what you really are. That sentence alone has saved me more than any formal training ever could. I adjusted my tie, straightened my jacket, and more importantly, I calibrated my expression, because this wasn't a costume, it was armor. And the face I wore into that meeting wasn't false, it was intentional. We all pretend, every single day. The tragedy is not that we pretend, it's that we do it so poorly, unconsciously, aimlessly, emotionally. Most people wear masks out of fear, but the Machiavellian does it with purpose, with direction. The art of pretending, in its purest form, is not about being fake, it's about using presence as a tool. Because in a world that punishes raw vulnerability and rewards well-shaped perception, your image is not decoration, it's leverage. I didn't always know this. In my early years, I believed in raw transparency. I thought honesty was the highest form of power, and I paid for that belief with missed opportunities, closed doors, and countless lessons wrapped in silence. I thought truth in its pure form was noble, but the truth I learned is more like a sharp medicine. It must be delivered in the right dose, at the right time, to the right person, or it will be rejected and weaponized. Machiavelli never taught us to lie. He taught us to understand what people need to see before we show them what's real. That morning, as the door handle clicked and the first footsteps echoed across the marble floor, I activated what I now call the mask of presence. Calm, cordial, grounded. It wasn't deception, it was strategy. Because pretending, done with clarity, isn't about becoming someone else. It's about showing the part of yourself that serves the moment, the self that gets things done. If you've made it this far, you're not like most. You're not just watching, you're seeing. And if Machiavellian strategy speaks to you, do this. Or subscribe now to fuel your mind with deeper truths. Like this video so others find it too. And in the comments, type the word mask if you understand the hidden power of showing exactly what the moment demands. The meeting had officially begun. People filtered in one by one, carrying laptops, coffee cups, and the invisible armor of corporate performance. I watched them quietly. I always watch before I speak. There's power in observation. It reveals more than words ever could. You learn who's confident, who's anxious, who's bluffing, and who hasn't even realized they're playing a game. Most people step into these rooms hoping to be understood. The Machiavellian walks in, knowing understanding is a luxury few ever offer, so instead, he positions himself to be interpreted strategically. Machiavelli wrote, "Men forget more quickly the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance." It's brutal, it's cold, and it's true. What does it tell us? That most people aren't motivated by ideals. They're driven by self-interest, comfort, control, legacy, and once you grasp that, everything shifts. You stop appealing to their logic or loyalty and start speaking to what actually moves them, their desires, their fears, their ambitions. And when you learn to speak to those, you stop selling, you start influencing. As I began presenting, I didn't aim for truth in its rawest form. I aimed for targeted resonance. I didn't twist the data. I framed it to the financial director. I emphasized cost efficiency and ROI. To the marketing lead, I spoke about potential and reach. To the CEO, I painted a picture of long-term strategy and industry dominance. I wasn't lying. I was layering meaning, each word selected not for technical accuracy alone, but for emotional impact, not because I'm manipulative, because I understand how humans receive information. This is where most people fail. They believe communication is about clarity, but Machiavelli knew it's about calculation. If you don't shape how your message is received, someone else will reshape it for you. People don't respond to what's true. They respond to what feels true to them. And truth, ironically, is one of the most powerful weapons in a Machiavellian's arsenal when wielded correctly. I remember years ago, early in my career, I gave a pitch filled with facts. Every number double-checked, every chart bulletproof, and yet it fell flat. Not because it lacked value, but because it lacked emotional grip. That experience taught me something Machiavelli tried to warn us about. Merit is invisible if it's not perceived as power. It's not enough to be right. You must be believably right, strategically right, emotionally right. That's what shapes decisions in rooms like these. The meeting moved forward. Some nodded along. Others questioned. But I was ready for all of it, because I had entered not to inform, but to guide perception. I didn't want people to agree with me. I wanted them to believe that agreeing with me was their idea. That's what true influence feels like. Not dominance, but alignment. Machiavelli didn't ask us to trick people. He asked us to understand them so deeply that we could guide them without resistance. The modern world loves authenticity, but authenticity without awareness is dangerous. It's like showing up to a sword fight with your heart in your hands. Machiavelli didn't say abandon your values. He said, shape their expression, speak in the language the room understands, hide your full hand. Not out of fear, but because wisdom isn't about giving all of yourself away. It's about knowing how much to show and to whom. By the time the proposal was fully on the table, the atmosphere shifted. Eyes were sharper, the silence heavier. That's the turning point in any negotiation. When the room silently decides whether they'll challenge or cooperate. It's also the moment where most people double down on strength. They try to appear flawless, invincible. But that, Machiavelli would say, is a mistake, because invincibility invites resistance. When people see no cracks, they assume you must be hiding something. And that suspicion, it kills momentum. That's when I did what many wouldn't dare. I exposed a flaw, not a major one, not something that would unravel the proposal, just a controlled weakness, something real but resolvable. I pointed out a section of the plan where additional insight would be needed, a missing piece the team could help complete. Instantly, the room softened. The tension diffused. People leaned in, not to attack, but to contribute. In that moment, the proposal stopped being mine and became ours, and that paradoxically made it bulletproof. Machiavelli warned, a prince must avoid being hated, but he never said a prince must appear perfect. In fact, he understood that appearing too perfect breeds resentment. It isolates. People begin to feel inferior, in your presence. So instead, the wise leader chooses strategic vulnerability. You show just enough imperfection to be relatable, but not enough to lose control. It's a balance, a dance, and most importantly, it's deliberate. I remember something my mentor once told me, sipping espresso across from me at a quiet cafe. If you want someone to trust you, ask them for a small favor, he said. I frowned. Why would I do that? I asked. He smiled. Because the brain justifies its own generosity. If they help you, they'll tell themselves you're worth helping. That's how trust is built. That lesson stuck with me. Today, psychology calls it the Benjamin Franklin effect. But centuries ago, Machiavelli had already intuited it. You don't build alliances by dominating the room. You build them by allowing people to feel they matter to the outcome. When someone contributes to your success, even in a small way, they become invested in it. And when people are invested, they protect what they've helped build. So I let them help. I let the CFO tighten the numbers. I welcomed the marketer's idea for packaging. And I watched something amazing unfold. Skeptics became supporters, and critics became collaborators. The flaw I introduced didn't weaken my position. It humanized it, and that made it stronger than any perfect pitch ever could. This is what most don't understand about Machiavellian thinking. It's not about hiding your soul. It's about revealing it strategically. Pretending isn't about being fake. It's about being functional. Every expression, every silence, every detail crafted not to manipulate, but to move people toward aligned outcomes. Because here's the paradox. To be strong in public, you must first learn how to be selectively vulnerable in private. That's not weakness, that's tactical leadership. The meeting concluded, smiles exchanged, agreements made, and handshakes offered with the usual executive polish. But I stayed seated for a moment longer. Not to bask in the outcome, but to reflect, because I've come to believe that reflection is the final act of power. Without it, even the most brilliant moves become hollow. And as I watched the last colleague exit the room, I asked myself the same question I always do after a win. Why did I want this? It's the question that divides those who play the game from those who understand it. Machiavelli has often been misunderstood as a teacher of cruelty or deception, but that's a surface reading. His true brilliance was in showing us how to survive in a world that rarely rewards sincerity on its own. His tactics were cold because the world he wrote for was colder, and still is, but beneath the strategies, beneath the steel of his words, was a deeper truth. Power means nothing unless it's connected to purpose. For years, I sharpened every Machiavellian principle: adaptability, impression management, strategic vulnerability, perfect timing, flexible virtue. I mastered them not to manipulate, but to protect something I was building. An organization that values substance over flash, a place where people can grow, create and contribute without constantly fighting for visibility, where the mask becomes a tool, not a prison. That's my why. That's my anchor. Machiavelli wrote, "The greatness of a prince is measured by the caliber of those who rise to oppose him." That line lives in my bones. It reminds me that we must choose worthy battles, not just easy victories. That strength is not shown through dominance, but through restraint. And that influence, when untethered from purpose, becomes just another hollow performance in a world already drowning in them. So I walked out of that room, not as a winner, but as a guardian. Not of ego, not of power for its own sake, but of a vision, and I smiled, not because I had outmaneuvered others, but because I had done so without losing myself. I had shown what needed to be shown, concealed what served no one, and guided the room toward an outcome that would benefit everyone, even those who didn't know it yet. This is the true art of pretending, the Machiavellian kind. Not lying, not manipulating, but understanding that we live in a world of appearances, and if we do not learn to navigate that world with intent, we will be forever at its mercy. So I leave you with a final question. What is your mask hiding, and what is it protecting? Because when used with wisdom, the mask doesn't hide the truth. It delivers it at the moment it will matter most. If this resonated with you, there's your final move. Subscribe to unlock deeper content like this. Like this video if it shifted your perspective, and drop the word purpose in the comments if you understand that power without direction is just noise, and you choose to play for something bigger.